Hey guys, I'm Angela and welcome back to Hobby Night. We've got a very special new series for you. Hobby Night is getting its very first podcast, and today my guest is Jack the Chaos Cultist.
Hello, everyone.
Hi there. Now, we have some special plans for the podcast. This is going to be a hobby podcast down the line, but we're going to start it off by talking about the Bad Batch because we just had season 2 start. And because we want this to be a weekly podcast, we figured, you know what? There's a new episode every week. We've got 3 to talk about today. I am super excited for this. Are you hyped for this?
Oh, absolutely. I have been I love season 1 of the show. Honestly, we were a little late to watching Andor, so we only watched that like a week ago, and that was honestly a great lead-in for season 2
Oh my God,
of
it
the Bad
so
Batch. We'll
was.
talk about that a little bit more. Just to add to what Angela was saying about plans for this, down the road, we do want to make this possibly a live podcast, maybe not every week, but more often. It's
Absolutely.
just I've never done like backstage production for a podcast or a live show like that before, so give us a few weeks to figure that out before we actually do this live.
Exactly. But for now, we're going to go ahead and pre-record it, and let's go ahead and start talking about episode 1 of season 2 of the Bad Batch, Spoils of War.
So just to remind everybody how season 1 ended, the final episode of last season was called Camino Lost, appropriately because in that episode we saw the destruction of the Caminoan cloning facilities by the Empire. It's something we had heard about in the lore previously when the Empire outlawed cloning, but we actually got to see it. And
It was devastating.
considering how much time we've spent with the clones through the clone, theoretically, if you don't count Rebels, there's been like 8 seasons following the Clone Boys.
I know.
Even more if you count like Tales of the Jedi.
Yes.
So seeing that lost was a bit of a heartbreak. But sort of more importantly, from a character perspective, we saw Crosshair left by the Bad Batch on like the ruins of one of those cities. And we'll talk a little bit later on this episode about how long he was left there.
Yeah.
That was sort of where we were at the end of season 1. The Bad Batch had escaped, but there are no more clones, and Camino is basically a crater.
Yeah. Which is unfortunate because the Empire really likes to do that to planets, and it's not cool because it's always my favorite planets.
It's always the more dynamic ones.
Indeed.
Now, that brings us to season 2, episode 1, Spoils of War. And immediately, the showrunners, I think, wanted to make this season look different than everything we've seen before, because we start with a scene that is bright and colorful, and we find most of the Bad Batch, especially Echo, Wrecker, and Hunter, fleeing from a group of crab people.
Crab people.
Walk
Crab.
like crab, speak like peeps. Anyway, so they are running from a group of crab people who they have stolen some MacGuffin
Something from.
Yeah,
Mhm.
for Azzy, their fence. And immediately we are introduced to just a bright, sunlit scene with some brand new armor designs for
Oh my God.
everyone.
Yes, and they look so good. Like this scene, just to talk a little bit about it, for me was exceptional because I feel like a lot of season 1 often took place at nighttime or indoors where we weren't getting a lot of like really direct sunlight or vivid colors that often in the show. So to see season 2 start with this episode where they're on a beach with like this beautiful crystal clear water, and that we have some new colors added to their armor and some like variation therein. Oh my God. It was so beautiful. Like I absolutely loved every moment of this. I also was really pleased to see that a lot of this footage was what was in the trailer, and it didn't really end up spoiling a lot of what we're going to eventually get in this season, which I'm very excited for because I really don't like when we get to see the super cool elements in the trailer and then those are like really late into the season, and so you're just kind of anticipating and you're like, you get a bunch of just in between. They don't do that. They just started us off with like brilliance, and it was great.
Yeah, because we get a lot of action here because back at the ship, we find Tech and Omega, excuse me, once
Yes.
again with new designs. We'll talk about Omegas here in a second. And when the majority of the crew get to the ship, it's sort of a get the ship going, move, 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 move.
Let's go, let's go, let's go.
It's a Firefly situation where they gotta get off the planet as quick as possible.
Absolutely.
And we see like the first action scene of the show, and there's a heavy emphasis on Omega actually being a capable fighter.
Which was really, really cool to see because we saw at the end of the last season where she got her bow and she was trying to take a more like main role as part of a team member, because before she had been really like not exactly a damsel in distress, but she got kidnapped a lot and had to be saved. And I feel like so far we've immediately gone like, no, this is a different Omega. She's capable. She's learned how to use her bow quite well. She like totally saves Tech from some of the crabs that get on the actual ship, like on the Marauder, which was really cool because she just like knocks them off immediately. So she obviously has that clone like accuracy and military training in there somewhere, and it's coming out full force, and I love seeing it.
And also, just to add to her capabilities, there was a heavy emphasis on her studying tech manuals, ironically,
Yes.
with Tech. And it seems like we might be going the direction that Omega ends up being a bit of a like vehicle otaku.
Which would be really cool.
Yeah, like I think she's she's gonna end up being the person who will be able to look at the silhouette of any starfighter and tell you what corporation made it and what its maximum speed is. Like I think she's gonna end up being that kind of character. Which leaves me hopeful that she's gonna end up being a pilot or something more in the future.
Oh, I hadn't even thought of that. That's a great call. Yeah, she might end up being. I could see that. I could see them making her a pilot because they don't really have a super dedicated like ace pilot in the Bad Batch right now.
I think Hunter sort of plays that role.
He plays the role, but he like only like he
Maybe
just
Echo.
plays it because he is, I think, the leader, and so he ends up driving a lot.
He's got the best senses, so he'd be like the quickest reaction time, right?
Yeah, that's sort of the theory I think there. But if she ends up being the person who's, like, oh, that'd be really cool and very interesting too, especially if Omega ends up coming into like the Ahsoka series later on.
Mm-hmm.
I want like that engagement with Hera potentially.
Yeah.
Of them both being pilots.
Oh, that could be cute.
Yeah, right? I love it.
So having retrieved their narrative MacGuffin for that scene, they return back to their home base, Sid's parlor, and are greeted by their fence/handler, Azzy. We are introduced to a new character who I am not familiar with before the series, named Fee Genoa. I think it's how it's pronounced, Genoa.
Yeah, I think that's how they pronounce it in the show.
Yes, and she is voiced by Wanda Sykes, famous comedian and TV actress. So I suspect we'll be seeing more of her later this season.
I hope so. I really liked her.
Yeah, she flirts and sort of takes advantage of Wrecker a little bit, but otherwise, we sort of move on to a conversation that Azzy has, in particular with Hunter. There might have been some other clones or Bad Batch members there as well, but they end up talking about the Empire and its reach, sort of getting closer and closer.
Yes, and I thought this was a really like interesting scene because one, I like that the fence is actually aware of her and the Bad Batch's situation even more so than the Bad Batch are, going like, no, I've been paying attention to what's happening out there. The Empire is going to get its hands out in this direction, and I'm not going to be able to keep doing this because it's not going to be safe anymore. So we need to get whatever jobs we can in that are the most profitable while we still can, because they're coming and there ain't nothing that's stopping them right now.
Mm-hmm. It's you would hope after everything they've seen that they would kind of realize what is coming for them. But sort of the theme for the next 3 episodes is that the clones are the metaphorical lobsters in the boiling water and they're not noticing it. And I mean that for all of the clones.
Yes, although I will say that I do feel like Echo is the most aware. because
Yes.
he knows that something needs to be done because he sees the overreach.
Hmm.
Whereas Hunter definitely is only starting to because he's so hyper focused on just giving Omega a different life from what
Family
they had.
survival. Hmm.
Exactly. Which I think is going to be an interesting struggle for him as we go through this season because we see it a little bit in the next episode as well. And I assume we're going to see it in future episodes where he still has to sort of go between doing what's right for the greater good, if you will, of everybody versus what's right for maybe him and his family specifically.
Yes, and that sort of brings us to the opportunity that Azzy brings forward to Hunter
Yes,
and the Bad Batch, and that is that she has learned about Lord Dooku's war chest from the Clone Wars is about to be moved from his home world and his palace to Coruscant or to somewhere else for the Empire to secure it. And
exactly.
while they're moving it, they have an opportunity to get a portion of it. The way that she puts it, if they were to just collect one chest from this thing, it would pay more than all of their previous jobs combined. It's that classic trope for the story of just one more job, man.
At
Just
one
one
more
more
job.
job. Um,
Exactly.
and Hunter's not feeling it. He's aware of the high level of security and risk involved, and he's like, "We're the Empire thinks we're dead. They think we died on Camino. Maybe let's not do that." But just to sort of summarize a bit of drama, the rest of the Bad Batch kind of come together and tell him they want to pursue this objective. They want,
They want the score.
yeah.
They wanna challenge themselves and go after the score because they think they can do it, and they see the benefits of getting it.
Yeah, it's the D&D party that has had a few too many victories, and they think they can take that challenge rating a little higher than they should.
Exactly. I love it.
Yes. Um, and throughout all this, it should be highlighted that once they take the job, um, Omega ends up overhearing a conversation between Echo and Hunter
Yes.
discussing their situation, and I think this is a trope that's handled exceptionally well by the show.
Agreed.
It's not uncommon to have in a storyline a small child overhears two family members, two friends, their parents saying something that out of context sounds completely wrong. And that's
Yeah,
kind of what happens here with Omega, because she hears Echo telling Hunter that they're in this situation because
because
of
of her.
her. Yeah. And but the point really there, and she sort of hears the entire conversation. Like, I don't think she hears anything out of context,
No,
but
I think
she
she just
literally
takes it
lacks the maturity to understand what they're saying.
correct. Because she is still like 13 or 14 now, because she has aged up a little bit in this season. I think in the last season, she was supposed to be
Preteen, definitely.
11 or
Yeah.
so, and I think now she's supposed to be 12 or 13. And yeah, it's really just that she doesn't have the understanding to really grok what he's saying, like what Echo specifically is saying of what he means when he says that they're in this situation because of her. Because she takes it very negatively. Like she looks at it and goes, "Oh, I've put my brothers in this like terrible situation where they're on the run. They feel like they got to hide and they're also all having to look after me." And I think that's like where her thought process goes throughout this like these two episodes that we're going to talk about.
Opposed to the spoilers, the feeling of, if it wasn't for her, we would probably be dead.
Or working for the empire at the worst and
Yeah.
probably not enjoying ourselves or living the lives that we actually want to be living because we've been more free now than we ever have been.
Exactly, right?
Right.
But so they set out on this mission. Omega is gung ho as heck. She's got that clone, I must complete the mission, I am a cadet, feeling going in her.
Which I
And
really liked seeing, actually. I love every time that they have the little moments where she behaves like we kind of saw the clones when they were younger, or what you've seen their cadets behave, to be like, no, she still is a clone, even though she was raised slightly differently, and they obviously made her a girl instead of a boy for the like whatever studies they were doing. But like I really like that element to her.
Right? And so that brings us to their arrival on the planet for the mission itself, on Serrano. That's the name of the capital of Dooku's old home
Yes.
world, I guess. Do we wait?
Home planet?
No, Dooku was actually from Coruscant. Now that I'm
No,
saying
no,
that.
I think he's from no, I think he's from because remember he is a duke of a planet. Like he is
That's right.
royalty. So this is
That's
his home
right.
planet, I think. He
Okay.
just went to Coruscant to be trained because his father, I think, was like, ugh,
That's right.
Jedi.
That's right. That's right. Qui-Gon was the one from Coruscant. Sorry, I got
Correct,
that mixed
yes.
up. Yes. So they get there and are greeted with the bombed out remnants of the capital city. It's an interesting take on because they didn't go with like crater.
No.
It definitely has the look of like turbo lasers just bombarded the place versus
Yeah.
opposed to like a single massive explosion. Once again, going with the Empire, probably something going for more spectacle and fear than anything else, than actual efficient killing.
I think so too.
Um, and so they see this and they make their way through the jungle. They reach the palace, and there they find a clone division loading this treasure onto transports. And very quickly, they are able to sneak on board one of the cargo containers that is being prepared for transport, but not before Wrecker, I think it is, ends up knocking out one of the clone troopers who was on patrol.
Yes. He
And
did
so
it quietly,
he
but he
did
still knocked him out.
he did it quietly, and what we quickly learn is that this is not just some half-assed stormtrooper battalion that's running this thing. Because now the reason this is highlighted is because this one missing soldier very quickly alerts the clones that are on duty that something is amiss.
Yep.
And we are introduced to the commander of this group, Captain Wilco.
Captain Wilco. Oh, I love this character so much.
Oh yes, poor Wilco. I hope he at least gets a figure or something.
Oh, me too, actually. Me too. I hadn't thought of that, but yes, I hope he gets like a Black Series figure or something.
Right, and so during all this, the Bad Batch is actually split into two groups. The one group that's now inside the cargo container, and another group that is outside, planting explosives on the Empire's escort fighters. And as a distraction, they set off those explosives, detonating the V wings. Actually, I was very excited to see some V wings animated.
Yeah, that's right. They were V wings.
I have the old Lego set for that one, so I was quite happy to see it.
It's a pretty cool one.
But once again, the reactions of the Imperials is not what we would normally expect.
No, because this is still a group that is actually run by a clone trooper, and Wilco is efficient. It's a big, actually, part of his character, and in the next episode, we'll talk more about him because there's some stuff happens. But like, it's really clear that he's doing everything he can to try to capture them, and the only thing that's keeping them one step ahead of the clones that are there is the fact that they are the main characters in the Bad Batch.
Yeah.
And they're,
Plot
smarter.
armor is the only thing saving them, because Wilco
Really
in any other situation would have destroyed like a squad of clones.
I feel like Wilco could have
droids.
easily. Yeah, I feel like Wilco could have easily been up there with like, and maybe this is saying too much, but I feel like he could have been up there with Rex and Cody in regards to like commander level of like
That's
efficiency.
what they were trying to present, I think. Yes.
And I think they did a great job with it, because I immediately felt that way. I was like, oh, this season has been interesting to me already, even just with episode 1, because there's constantly moments where I'm like, oh, well, I want the Bad Batch to succeed, but I can tell that these clones like aren't fully brainwashed by the Empire yet. And so I'm also rooting for them in a weird way. So anytime any of them gets injured or killed or whatever, I'm just like, no.
And so Captain Wilco, once again, knowing what he is doing, decides, one, with what forces he has on the ground to try and contain the Bad Batch, but he orders, and this is key, he orders the ships on the ground to go.
Yes.
And because of this results in, it's
tech Echo,
and Omega.
and
Yes.
Omega, I think that are the three that are in the cargo ship when it takes off.
Yeah, so when the ship takes off, all the cargo doors shut, they hard seal from the outside and basically get deadbolt locked. And this results in those three getting separated into this very large and impressive looking, like, cross between a space 18-wheeler and like a literal cargo ship, like an Evergreen
Yeah, it's really
style.
cool looking.
They take off in that, and they attempt to do what the standard heroes always do. They're like, we'll get to the escape pods, Angela.
Yeah, we'll get to the escape pods, and they do try, but Captain Wilco is a smart man, and he ejects the escape pods so that they can't. Because, like, that's the thing, is, like, this guy is always thinking how the Bad Batch would be thinking of, like, we need to do X, Y, and Z. So he's going to do X, Y, and Z to counter that and make it so that they can't, which ends up leading to them ending up getting back into one of the cargo containers and releasing all of them. Because Omega, with her the manual she was reading, knows that if these cargo containers like are falling, they'll eventually have propulsion jets come out and they can use that to land, which I thought was just a really great tie back to the beginning of the episode. And the reason why they're like making her study is so that she can actually be a really valuable member of their team. And that's immediately shown in the exact same episode.
Yes, and that's sort of where we end up ending the episode, is those three end up going back to the cargo container they started in, and I believe it's Echo is able to hack basically the magna locks on all the containers, and before the ship breaks atmosphere, there's this beautiful shot of just all these containers like sort of unlocking and falling into free fall, which is a little bit of a problem, which we'll talk about here at the beginning of episode 2. But before we get to that, I want to cover Wrecker and Hunter, because they did get out of the cargo container and were on the ground. They ended up escaping Captain Wilco's troops and sort of diving into that ruined city we talked about earlier in the episode. And
they're in Dooku's like main palace, if I recall.
Yeah, so they ran into his palace to basically escape the firefight outside, and eventually found one of Dooku's old hidden passages to escape, which allowed them to then get into the city. Something that I should highlight in that episode and all the episodes is that we see a very concentrated effort, and this is another reason why Wilco's men don't quite succeed. The Bad Batch are not using lethal most of the time.
This is correct, yeah. Something that they even did last season, I think, a lot as well, but
the back half of the season,
the back half of the season especially, they don't seem to, like, if they can avoid using lethal on their clone brothers, they do. It's not to say that they don't kill them accidentally or outright in some instances.
Yeah, if you're flying a jet fighter at them, they will just shoot you out of the air. They don't care.
Yes, they will still do that, but if it's avoidable, they will try to use their stun weapons on the clones so that they're not killing them, because they don't want to kill their brothers. They know that they were manipulated and are still being controlled by the Empire, and there's nothing they can specifically do for all of them at this time, so they don't want to hurt them if they can avoid it.
Absolutely.
Or kill them, I guess, if they can avoid it. I guess they're okay with hurting them, but just killing them is
I was
what
gonna
they're
say
not about.
they'll shock their like nervous systems a few times, but it's fine.
It's fine.
Yeah, so that's another reason why we sort of see this clone division sort of succeed against the Bad Batch, is because they're not really taking casualties. Like, give a guy like an hour and he's getting back up and seemingly relatively ready to be back in the fight. So
exactly,
they're fighting a battle of attrition they cannot win, so they have to escape here. And Wilco just continues to illustrate his competency of, like, he orders like a full sweep and patrol. He is not going to be one of those, like, villains who's like, the good guy fell into a ravine, surely I have defeated him. No, he wants corpses, man. He wants proof. He wants
proof that they're dead, especially considering he figures out who they are.
Next episode.
Yeah, next episode. But yeah, he wants proof that they're actually no longer a threat to the Empire, which I think is, admirable for him. He's just working for the wrong people.
So yes, and so that will take us into episode 2, Ruins of War.
So at the beginning of Ruins of War, episode 2 of the Bad Batch, Omega, Tech, and Echo are still in the container and are plummeting to their death.
They are until the basically the re-entry thrusters, I think they call them. I wanted to call them like stabilization thrusters, but
something like that. Whatever the thrusters that Omega mentioned in the last episode kicked in and actually did what they were supposed to and started to give them a little bit of a calmer descent.
Yeah, and actually they would have landed fine if not for the ironically positioned cliff that they decided to land like 50% on.
Yeah,
it was like a Looney Tunes situation. They just landed like...
Yep, exactly like that.
Right on the edge. Unfortunately, not realizing that because they're in a box.
With no windows or anything, so they have no idea what orientation they've landed in.
So they end up walking to the wrong side of the container, sending it tumbling over the edge to where they finally crash. And for the second time in like 3 months, a major character has been crushed by a container.
Thankfully, spoilers for Andor.
No, you don't have to tell anyone. I didn't tell them what happened.
Fine, fair enough. I'm not saying what happened, but like, good lord, if this could stop happening. Thankfully, Tech, it is, I believe, the one who gets injured, is not like
leg gets shattered.
Yeah, his leg gets fractured. He knows the exact pressure that caused the fracture and precisely where it is, which I think is just a nice like continuing to develop his personal character as being this like hyper smart.
He's a mentat now.
Yeah, essentially, he becomes a mentat, which is actually really cool. Because before in season 1, he and Echo, I think, were a little bit underutilized or underdeveloped as like personalities amongst everybody else.
They were kind of doing the same role, so they ended up like, each of them got half as much time as maybe they should have.
I agree, and this time they really seem to be making them more separate. In regards to personality, even though they still have some overlap of things that they can do. And I really like the direction they've taken Tech in.
So, and we see that sort of more throughout this episode, that Tech and Echo getting more personality traits. We'll talk more about Echo's near the end of the episode.
Yeah.
But so, while that's unfortunate, I think they slap a back-to patch on him or something, because, like, for a man with a broken leg, he moves decently.
Well, I think it's supposed to just be fractured. Well, I don't think he fully broke it, so maybe that's...
I'm also thinking the Bad Batch carries back-to patches.
So. They probably do. You're probably right.
He's a little... Like, he's limping, he's in a lot of bloody pain, but he's going... And so at this point, they are able to get out of the container through a hatch and basically rappel up the cliff.
Yes, and they start making their way through the forests of the area, but they quickly run into somebody who lives there.
Well, before that, I just wanted to go back and revisit Hunter and Wrecker.
Oh, yes, of course.
It's because while all this is going on with the free fall and the escape from the cargo containers, Hunter and Wrecker have been making their way through the ruined capital and are being pursued quite quickly by Captain Wilco. And going back to what we were saying in episode 1, Angela, we end up seeing Captain Wilco really start to show his capabilities here.
He really does.
We see a return of the Republic dropship, which is, great to see. Made me nerd out for our Lego set.
Oh my god, me too. We just built it, so I was like, oh, yay! I'm glad to see this still being around and used.
And what ends up happening is we see Captain Wilco has a specialist who's monitoring comms in the area. Hunter and Wrecker become aware of this and have to actually issue an order of radio silence.
Yes.
And so that sort of keeps our two teams separated while Hunter and Wrecker are still being pursued by an increasingly well-armed attack force. Because, like, first it was just troopers, then they got bikes, now they got an LA-AT, I think.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. Yes, I believe so. Yeah, no, they just keep getting more and more like forces to actually start hunting them down, which is why they end up working their way through the city and ending up on top of like some old droid tanks, which was really cool to see. Which makes sense also that they would be there too, because like this is Dooku's homeworld. He was a separatist. He had a bunch of droids, so you'd expect to see them like ruins of them in the city, and you do, and they start ending up trying to go through and see if they can find any sort of weapons to help aid them against this increasing number of clones that are coming after him.
Yeah, with heavier and heavier hardware themselves,
Yes.
and then thankfully they're able to find. I don't remember the name of the tank, but it's that standard like B1 battle tank that
Yes.
they drove in like Phantom Menace and everything.
Yeah.
And they find this, and Wrecker begins to work on something. But before we get to what they finish, we should come back to the group you mentioned wandering through the woods.
Yes, because this is now well, after they've gone into radio silence. I had forgotten about that
Yep.
particular portion of it. But once they've gone into radio silence, that's when Omega actually realizes that they're being watched by somebody that's in the forest, and they're able to confront him. She threatens him with her bow, which I just like. It just kind of continues to push that whole gung ho ness of her of like doing her mission, being a good soldier, if you will. Like
Yeah, she's
that has been a
only
theme
known
through this.
military training because the character they run into, his name's Romar, I believe.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean he's like a geriatric farmer.
Yeah, he definitely is
He's
just
not a
like
threat.
a peasant of Dooku's, essentially, and not a threat whatsoever. He does lie to them immediately, though, saying that there's no places where they can rest up because, Tech has injured his leg and everything, while they wait for reinforcements, which they then realize, Tech just uses, I think, his binoculars, sources out that there's a heat source and goes, I assume that's your abode.
Yeah, he's
And
checking
he
in
is,
for red, and he's like, nah, there's a hearth right over there.
yeah, so just take us there. And he does. He's like, I guess I have no choice. And he brings them back to where he's hiding because he's
It's his
not exactly
house.
living in luxury or anything right now with the city being destroyed and
Mhm.
his people devastated.
Yeah, so he sort of is our window into what actually happened on Sereno and sort of the people's view of what happened with Dooku. And he sort of, spins a tale that, lines up with a lot of what we've heard about Dooku of like he was like considered a great leader, and then, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And he
Hmm.
eventually ended up stealing, much of the art, culture, and wealth from the homeworld, both for his war and just for his own coffers, as we saw in the war chest itself.
Exactly.
Um, and Romar sort of definitely acts as our moral lesson in all this, particularly through Omega,
And for
because
Tech, actually.
yeah, because well, before Tech, there's a point where they have Omega watching Romar while he's just like working. He's just cleaning up his
Yes.
garage or something like that.
Yeah, I think they went down into like a lower level and he's organizing some stuff. And she actually finds like a toy
He
like
gives
on his
her.
floor. Or is that what, did he give it to her?
I think he ends up tossing it to her, and she's like, "Ooh, what's this?" And then she looks inside of it,
Hmm.
and it turns out to be a kaleidoscope.
Yes. But all she's thinking about, because she's incredibly worried about financing her family, is she goes, oh, are these gems? Is this valuable?
Yeah, and this is something that they don't sort of say explicitly, but I was thinking about and talking to you about it is Omega has never all of her like influences have been either asexual aliens that really lack passion, the Kaminoans,
Correct. Yeah.
or they have been masculine Mandalorian Captain Americas. Like that's
Basically, yeah,
all
with the
she's
clones.
known. She's never known play. She's
No,
never
she's
known
never
games
experienced
outside of war
childhood.
games. She doesn't even
Correct.
know like, we talked about this with her character design. She's got a very tomboyish slash gender neutral appearance, and I think that
Hmm.
narratively makes sense for a character who has never had a humanoid female around.
Correct. Or really just anything outside of military strategy and education, like,
Yeah.
or science. Because that's what her entire life has been.
And duty and
Um,
responsibility.
And duty and responsibility. Yeah, she's never had those moments of like, here is a toy, here is a gift. Even like, I don't feel like she really seemed to have gotten many of those because I don't really get the impression they celebrated her birthday or anything.
They didn't celebrate Life Day on Camino.
Yeah, I don't think they celebrated Life Day on Camino for her. So it really is it's an interesting thing because she's never experienced that before. So it's really funny to see her brain just go, oh, shiny.
Yeah,
Which they had, I mean, they had made
really experienced art even
no,
because
no, she hasn't.
I learned this very recently. The reason why the Caminoans' cities and the armor on the clone troopers and everything is stark white, the lore reason, is
Yeah.
because they actually see in the ultraviolet spectrum more
Oh,
so
that's
than the
right.
light spectrum.
You
So
did
like
talk about this
their
recently.
like paint colors are all ultraviolet. So if you like look at their stuff with ultraviolet like goggles,
You
it's
would
like
see it, and it's
mhm.
probably vibrantly colorful and everything, but, like,
In the books that's what they say.
that's really cool. Yeah, and she doesn't have that vision, so she's never seen that, so she just knows stark whiteness and,
Yeah,
this
so the
very sterile
kaleidoscope is
environment.
probably very that's why it was probably so stunning for her and why she was like, is this gems? Is because she's never probably seen a stained glass window, you know?
Oh, absolutely. Well, they also made a point too of when they were in the crate the first time in episode 1 that she was like, "Well, what should I be taking?" And everybody was telling her the shiny things. So which is the other reason why
Mm,
that
mhm,
specific
mhm.
callback I think too is because she's like, "Oh, well this is a shiny thing and they told me to take shiny things. I wonder if this is valuable." And the guy just like sort of chuckles at her like, "No, that's just a toy.
You
Enjoy it.
are a
It's for."
clone.
Yeah, and it really does speak that way, and it's an interesting scene, I love it.
Yeah, because I think if you think about it, him being from Serrano,
Mhm.
Sereno, sorry,
Sereno, yes.
that means he would have also had propaganda about
Yes.
like how you know
The clones were, like,
mhm.
anti-clone, etcetera, yeah,
Yeah, so
because
he
that
probably thinks of the clones as very like, yeah, they're just flesh droids, whatever.
absolutely. Well, and the other thing that's interesting, speaking to that point about, the old man as well, is, like, this is also them diving more into what the Separatists were like outside of the main, like, big powers, as well as just the droids themselves, because all through Clone Wars, for the most part, it really focused on clones versus droids. We didn't really see the civilians too much, especially on the Separatist side, and this is like in here, and then I think it was in was it in Andor that they also ended up touching on some of like the separatists basically becoming the rebels down the line because they're still anti what Palpatine is and his rule.
Yeah,
Um
so yeah, we saw in Andor they talked about when they was meeting with oh, I'm blanking on the name of the extremist cell leader, Saul
uh,
Guerrera.
uh
Saul Guerrera.
yes.
When they're meeting with Saul Guerrera and Saul Guerrera is like, you know, neo, the neo federalists or talking about neo separatists or
Mhm.
rebellion alliance or all different names for the same thing, but it's all these different like separated groups.
Right.
And this is an interesting, okay, we are actually starting to put the seeds for that in multiple shows in the same like release year.
Which I really, really like seeing.
Yes. Sorry, I for some reason could not remember Neo Separatists to save my life. I kept wanting to say Neo Confederacy, and I'm like, I
No, that's
think.
not that's not right.
Well, I think there is one in there. I think there is
Oh, there
like
might
a
be.
confederacy of like independent planets. So I think it
Oh,
is
oh,
like there is
that makes
actually
sense
like
actually.
both. But to your point, they're really highlighting that the Separatists were not just a bunch of robots.
Right.
Because you talked about what Tech ended up doing with the man.
Yeah, so Tech ends up helping the gentleman because the whole reason he was down in his basement was because he was looking for some sort of like data storage unit that has a collection of his people's
Serenian
art
Data
in.
Core is what he called it.
Yeah, it was a data core, and it basically what's on it is a collection of his people's art and history and like drama and all that kind of stuff. It's their lore essentially.
It's his big external.
It's his big external with all of his people's history. And he's trying to repair it so that he can recover it because a lot of that has been lost in the destruction that has come with Dooku and his fall and then the Empire coming in and sweeping everything away. So he's trying to recover as much as he can. And that's what he's been doing as a survivor. And Tech ends up helping him fix it. And at first, when he's talking with the old man about it, he's just like, oh, interesting, a separatist archival record. And the man corrects him of like, no, this is a Sereno record. We are more than just, or Serenian, sorry, this is a Serenian record. We're more than just separatists. And Tech has this realization moment of, I've never really thought about that way because all through the Clone Wars, they were just told they're the enemy. And they weren't really allowed to explore like who they were as people. And while they do have some episodes in the Clone Wars that do touch on that, which I find really funny because we're watching Clone Wars right now as well to rewatch it. And all of these episodes we've just seen have been very, very relevant recently. But like, it's not something that they've covered a lot. So seeing more and more of that, I just think has been really exciting. And I hope they continue to do it because I really like seeing this side of the separatist force. Like I have so much feels for them now. And it's not just because I like some of the droids in the next episode, and we'll talk about them in a bit.
Yes, we will. And I do apologize. I like almost sneezed in the middle of what you were saying. So if I looked like I was about to die for a moment, that's why.
I was wondering. No worries.
I was doing this because I thought I was about to just explode. But yes.
Listen, I understand. I had that happen during stream yesterday, so I get it.
And so while Tech is distracted here and Echo is laid out with his bum leg, Omega...
Echo's actually out scouting. He left the facility to go scout on the speeder just to see like how the patrols were looking. It was just Tech and Omega in the city. That's
right, because Tech had to stay in because of the leg.
Because of his bum leg, yes.
That's right. Thank you. So yeah, I'm still getting them mixed up.
Listen, they are still kind of similar-ish.
So no one's watching Omega. She still has the guilt from what she heard in episode 1 about how they are in this situation because they saved her. Mm-hmm. She feels guilty about that, not really thinking about the benefits of the situation they're in. And she decides to run off and try and steal at least a chest from the downed cargo container. Keep in mind that she has no idea where Wilco's men are, or even the fact that Wilco has deployed an entire clone division to like sweep out and find every single one of these containers.
Yeah, she's just stuck really hard on this was the mission and we have to succeed because otherwise like the amount of money and how beneficial it will be for her family that this chest is supposed to make for them has really sunk into her head. This is the most important element. If we don't leave with this, we've wasted our time and gotten hurt. And she doesn't really want that.
Mm-hmm. And so, we were just talking about how she doesn't need to go get saved, but
That's true. We were talking about how she's not as like. Listen, she's still figuring things out.
It took Ahsoka a little while, guys. It's taken Omega a little while too. It's okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. All right. So that goes on. As you can imagine, Tech will realize that she's gone momentarily and set out to go find her, broken leg or not.
I think actually Echo and him go in because he comes back. I think what happens is Echo comes back on the speeder, goes, "Where's Omega?" And they both go, "Oh, she's not here." And so Echo runs out after her first, and then Tech slowly makes his way by himself, denying the old man's help, which I thought was a key element. Yes. And then tries to make his way to assist them. Now, before Tech actually gets there, Echo and Omega are confronted by the squad that has been sent by Wilco to find them. And they start firing upon them. Now, they don't know Omega's there. They only see Echo. But he gets knocked back into the cargo container with Omega. And then they are in there together. And that's when I believe Tech shows up, finally kind of hobbling. And he has the most badass moment.
Oh, like, God, yeah. He has a John McClane kind of situation.
Totally. He so does. Like, so he's injured severely. He's exhausted. And he's still not using deadly force. So he's just stunning the 3 clones that are there who have, I think, 2 speeder bikes that they're using to their benefit against him. And he eventually incapacitates all of them so that he can then help his team and get them out. thankfully, the old man does show up to aid him because he collapses. Like, I
Mhm.
actually think he collapses, and then we cut back to I think actually Hunter and
Wrecker.
Wrecker actually before we get back to the next scene I was about to talk about where they start saving. So we'll cut to that next.
Yeah, so back to Wrecker and Hunter. So Hunter is managing to sort of hold off Wilco's men as they're approaching, but they have incoming air cover from approaching V-wings.
Mhm.
But this at this point, Wrecker is gonna wreck it. And
Yes.
so what he ends up doing is he basically like takes the core of the tank's battle cannon out. I'm not sure how one would do that, but he does it.
He
Um,
listen, he has mad skills when it comes to guns.
yeah, so basically he yanks the battle cannon out of this tank and just starts to like, sort of shoulder it as out of the tank and it pops the V-wing just out of the sky with this thing and just starts
Totally killing that clone.
well, I said most of the time they try to be non-lethal.
I know.
And so with a mixture of Wrecker, now if you watch, Wrecker does his best to miss.
He
Wrecker,
does.
yeah. Thankfully, he's
Yeah.
not jibbing anyone with the darn thing.
No,
Um,
he is actually specifically like aiming near their feet and at the ground to slow them down, or he'll be aiming at things that can like be exploded next to them in the hopes that it again slows them down or at least knocks them out, but like doesn't kill them outright.
mhm. And during all of this, this is when Wilco learns about his men that have also been incapacitated by Tech Echo and that group.
Yes.
So, in response, Wilco decides to fall back with his men and deploy his gunship out to take out the group at the container and try and cut off Hunter and Wrecker. I'm not really sure. He just ends up they kind of just run from Wrecker once he gets the
Yeah.
battle cannon. And Hunter and Wrecker kind of just end up making their way back to the Marauder.
I think they do. I thought they chased them all the way there, but I really think Wrecker was just the entire way, just keeping them back by aiming nearer to their feet and just keeping them one step ahead of
Yeah,
them.
they were definitely
literally.
keeping them back like a good distance.
Yeah, because I do remember there being like blaster fire at the Marauder as they were leaving,
Mhm.
and going to the also going to where the crate is to help save the rest of the team.
Yes, because by this point, radio silence has been broken because there's not really a point anymore. They know where everyone is.
Yes,
So because they're on the Marauder, they are en route to save the rest of them. But they are being chased by 3 V-wings in
yes,
pursuit of the Marauder. So we get a little bit of Starship fighter porn for myself and all those fans out there.
it was really nice to see.
Um, And so, sort of our final bit of drama in this episode is while the Marauder is racing to save them,
The container, I think, starts to slip again,
the
and
container
Omega ends up
starts.
dropping what little bit of treasure that she had accumulated in her backpack. She just like loses it
I
all.
remember. So Tech and the farmer are on the top of the cliff where
Mhm.
they throw a rope down to the container
Yes.
to pull Echo and Omega out. To be
Mhm.
clear, this container is like not it's vertical, like stuck to a side of a cliff,
Yeah.
like on a couple of plants.
Branches, yeah. I think
Yeah,
it's on
like
like
a
one
tree.
large tree that's like
Mhm.
slowly pulling out of the ground.
Yes. And so they're using this rope that they're using a speeder at the top to pull them out with. And they have the problem of they have very limited time because the Marauder will be here soon with the V-wings. The
Yep.
container they're inside of is about to plummet a few hundred more yards down to just crash and destroy itself. And
Mhm.
finally, the guys up top who are pulling them up with the ropes are about to have all of
Gunships on top of
Wilco's.
them.
Well, they're about to have all of Wilco's men on their own speeders
Mhm.
get on top of them, and so this leads Omega to her giant conflict.
Yes, which is the fallen treasure because she went back with her whole main goal to be like, I have to get at least some of this in order to help the team. It falls, she really gets stuck on like, no, I can get it really quick. I can get it really quick. And Tech has to have the conversation with her of, you have to let it go. This is not important enough. let it go. And then he tells her, because she basically confronts him. She's like, I heard what you said to Hunter. I know that you're in this situation because of me, and I need to make it right. So I have to get this. And he essentially tells her, it doesn't matter because I would have done everything exactly the same as I did before, because otherwise the situation I would be in and the situation the rest of the team would be in is we'd be working for the Empire, or at worst, dead. And we are now no longer, like, we have that freedom.
And they do, and that they get more into that detail later on when they've escaped on board the Marauder.
That's true. Yeah, they do go into more detail on it, I guess. But he does have the very stern, like, you have to let it go.
Yeah, that she has to let it go. And what he sort of makes a point of is she and their lives are more important than the mission.
Yes.
Because in that moment, she's like, I have to complete the mission. And he's like, the mission is pointless if we die.
Yes. Yes, that is also another element to that. I did jump a little bit ahead there.
Yes, but everything you said is absolutely correct. It's a one-on-one conversation they have.
She has on the Marauder with him afterwards. You're right. I forgot that it wasn't actually in the. No, I'm not like no. It's all good.
But yeah, so they end up, and if you watch the animation, if she had gone back and grabbed any of the gems, she would have dropped. Like, it was that quick. Like, they very animated it very well in the sense of if she did not go and grab his hand at that time.
Yeah, it would have fallen.
Exactly. So she made the right choice there. They end up pulling them out of the container using a stolen speeder from the clones. And I just want to call out something that means absolutely nothing, but I'm pretty sure those speeder bikes were 501st speeder bikes.
Oh, yeah, because they had a little bit of blue on them.
They had the blue markings. I entirely think that's because they probably just had 501st speeder bike models. And because it was mostly a night scene, they were like, just use those.
Okay, I actually have another theory, though, about that, because I could also... Well, yeah, because I could also see the Empire, especially as the Emperor specifically wants to continue to separate Darth Vader from Anakin. I could see him breaking up the 501st entirely, what may have been left of them from Order 66, and dividing them up so that, like, their equipment and all that stuff was no longer a unified force, and it just became clone stuff. So that it cut off Anakin from that connection point. Possibly. That's my theory.
Possibly, because Anakin does at some point switch his 501st to stormtroopers. Because he keeps a division called the 501st Vader's Fist, but they're no longer
right. They become the stormtroopers, and I wonder if that's part of the disassociation that, like, maybe the Emperor was trying to do. Who knows?
But the Marauder arrives just in time to save them, once again feeding into the if they had taken any more time saving treasure, they would not have escaped in time, because they get out by the skin of their teeth as Wilco's men arrive. The Marauder takes a few light gunfire, but
they were able to get away.
And following this is when Omega and Echo have their heart-to-heart conversation.
Yes. And then after that heart-to-heart conversation...
The best scene in the first 2 episodes.
Oh my god, yes. Oh, man. Wilco. Okay, you talk about it, because I will get too emotional and I'll get, like, all over the place with it. So you go.
Sure. So following all this, the next day, we are back at the Imperial base on Serena. And we see Captain Rex without his helmet, sort of...
Wilco,
excuse me, I said Rex. Sorry, Wilco. I was literally looking at the action figure. Sorry.
No, that's fair.
So Captain Wilco is standing there when Vice Admiral Rampart, the Vice Admiral that was in season 1 of the show, comes up to him, and he has a concern with the captain's report, because the captain reported seeing Clone Force 99, aka the Bad Batch, in this entire kerfluffle. And the Vice Admiral informs him that isn't possible, because the Bad Batch died on Kamino. The Vice Admiral's report to Admiral, or is it Moff Tarkin? Sorry, Governor Tarkin at this time.
Yeah, I think he's Governor Tarkin.
Yes. The Vice Admiral's report to Governor Tarkin was that Clone Squad 99 was killed. So if they weren't killed, this would represent a failure on the Vice Admiral's part. So he's going to need Captain Wilco to amend that report and adjust what he saw.
Oh my god! And the expression on Wilco's face when the admiral says this is just like you can see him processing it and going, "Nope, that's against protocol." And he basically says as much and tells him, "I'm not going to do that, sir. I'm not going to falsify a report." And the admiral responds in the most heartbreaking way possible by going, "That's fine, I'm going to do it." And then Wilco just falls off the side as he's shot.
Yeah.
And like we followed this particular, like I have to applaud the showrunners and the writing team for making me care in 2 episodes about so much about this one clone and then absolutely just destroying him.
I mean, the last 2 episodes have been dedicated at making Wilco look like a strong,
like a Captain Rex or like a Captain Cody.
There's something we didn't really talk about is in the battle with the battle cannon. Mm-hmm. Like, there were some soldiers who got hurt or killed.
It's true, and he walked around and checked on them and was like making sure everybody was okay. Like the thing is like they really did like approach Wilco as a compassionate, well-informed, efficient leader of these troops. And as they are, like, as we know, as the audience, the Empire is slowly, and not even really slowly, quickly phasing out the clone troopers when they can, like to see this like efficiency then and knowing it's going to get replaced with the inefficiency of some of the stormtrooper units and just the bureaucracy that is the Empire. It's just so heartbreaking to see and so well presented.
Yeah. The Vice Admiral's usurping of Captain Wilco is just, I mean, season 1 was all about the stormtroopers replacing the clones. This is about, that corruption and bureaucracy taking over from the thing that if you were a kid and grew up with the Clone Wars as your like childhood Star Wars, like those guys were, the good guys for you. And so seeing them go and just the way like you sort of talked about, but there's an animation tick in Wilco's face after he's told he needs to file a false report that is like, it's a mixture of like his honor and honestly, I don't know if his programming even allows
I really read it as, I've read it as a combination of his honor and literally his programming no, this is like against the rules.
Well, the good thing is, I mean, that was a heavy 2 episodes and a heavy way to end it, but I'm sure episode 3 will be more lighthearted.
Oh yeah, sure. I'm sure episode 3 is going to be much more lighthearted. Now we need to go into episode 3, a very, very happy episode, you guys, titled "The Solitary Clone."
What a
this sounds like it's going to be
episode,
right? It really, really does. It's not a perky episode, but it's also one of the like, I think, best episodes of this show that I think I've watched, and I love that we're finally following up with Crosshair.
Yes. So this episode is entirely focused on him. We don't see the others at all in this episode.
No, we do not see any, like, we don't see any of the other team, like the other Bad Batch members at all in this episode. It is entirely focused on Crosshair and one other returning member, which we'll talk about in a bit.
Yes. So the episode kicks off with a brand new planet that I've never heard of called Desix.
Yes.
It's sort of like so if Ferrix in Andor was like industrial revolution, this place is still like feudal agrarian. Like it's still it has that same kind of atmosphere where these are people who have to work damn hard to survive, but they are a very, like, I think there was an effort to make sure that the people of this city looked diverse, like, saw a mixture of humanoids, Rhodians, a number of different, like, alien
races,
living on this planet outside of this, like, space brutalist castle.
Yes.
Yeah, which is really cool looking, if a little foreboding. But as far as we
Yeah.
could tell, there didn't seem like there was anything like nefarious going on.
No, and this actually happens to be a, I guess, former separatist, or at least it is a planet that wants to maintain its independence from the Galactic Empire.
Yeah, they were definitely a former member of the Separatist Alliance. We learn a little bit more about that later in the episode, but
Yes.
we start out with a contingency of stormtroopers arriving on the planet along with an Imperial officer who we
Yes.
learn is identified as governor.
Yeah, what was his name?
Don't
I don't.
have their name. I don't have the governor. I have the other governor's name, the separatist governor's name. But
Yeah, but I don't remember what his name was specifically. But
well,
it's basically an imperial governor.
yeah, so an imperial gray uniform governor is there, and he is there to tell the established governor, Tawny Ames or Amos.
I think it was Ames is how she said
Ames,
it in the
okay.
show. I think.
Governor Ames that the Empire is here, and they are basically now part of the Empire, whether they like it or not.
And they're taking over.
Yeah, and they're planning on doing this with what, like 4 stormtroopers, it seemed like?
Yeah, I think there was like 4, maybe 6 of them, and then the like governor, who I will point out on the ride down was super nervous. Like he was gulping a lot and like looking distressed, even though he, is supposed to be this big scary governor coming in for the empire. But he definitely knew he was going into a fairly hostile situation, and it turns out yes, because Governor Ames did not want them there and wanted them to just leave peacefully, and that's not what went down. So she ends up capturing the governor, and
How
that's
does she
when
capture the governor? How does she capture the governor,
she
Angela?
captures the governor with droids. Oh my god, so many droids actually, and it's really cool to see the number of droids we end up seeing in this episode, because as the story goes on and as Crosshair gets involved, we're going to see even more of them. But she uses a bunch of B1s, I believe, at first. Like,
Yep.
I don't remember if it was just the B1s.
Yeah, just B1s at the first. We'll get to the rest a little bit later.
Yes.
But so he gets arrested by these droids, and we fanned out. Me especially, because in Legion I play separatists.
Yes.
And so from there we cut to Crosshair, who is no longer stranded on a random like flotilla on Camino, but appears to be living in the clone barracks back on Coruscant.
Yes.
And before we get into Crosshair's very depressing life, I want to sort of talk about what we see in the architecture of this barracks, because
sure.
calling it a barracks doesn't quite feel right, because the place almost feels like a Warhammer 40K temple monastery.
A little bit, yes. That is
Fortress
a very
monastery, yeah.
Yeah. It definitely has a little bit of that vibe, which is kind of an interesting design for them to put the clones into, I think.
Because, as some other people have pointed out, it is nowhere that we've seen on Coruscant before. It seems to be very far away from like the core, like where the Senate and the palace and where the Jedi Temple and all that were. So it seems very far away, and it seems like, it's got these giant like stone statues, and has this beautiful memorial wall for those that have fallen during the Clone Wars, but it's very isolated and feels almost like a monastery. And I just
really
that
does.
Interesting, like how isolated they've made the clones.
Oh, well, I mean, it makes sense because they or at least I hadn't really put that together until you said this, but to me it makes a lot of sense, because again, the Emperor is trying to get rid of them. Like, the Empire as a whole is just trying to get rid of them. So if he separates them, and it fits with the title of the freaking episode too, the solitary clone, like, it's not just referring to Crosshair, but it can refer to them as a species, if you will, like being isolated from the rest of Coruscant, which I had not at all put together. It's sad. It makes me sad. This is a sad episode.
It is, because to be even sadder about it, we follow Crosshair through his very depressing morning ritual. He
waking up to an alarm.
He wakes up alone to an alarm. he like, this is the standard, like he goes and showers, it's quiet, nothing happens, he gets his, breakfast, nobody wants to sit next to him in the lunchroom, like it's just the man is having a bad time. And when he's eating breakfast or lunch, doesn't really matter, he gets a summon over the PA to report to the Vice Admiral's office.
Yes.
But I want to highlight, before that, we overhear a conversation between two of the normal clones having lunch in the cafeteria. And they
Yes.
comment on the fact that there is a vote coming up in the Senate on, I don't have the exact name of it, but it's basically the Military Reformation Act for the Empire.
Yep.
And they sort of comment that they hope it doesn't pass because it's going to spell really bad news for them.
Yes, which I imagine is going to end up being a subject later on in the season that will get addressed. And if I had to make a guess, a prediction, if you will, I imagine it's going to get passed.
Well, yeah, because what we know ends up happening is this is not the stormtroopers. Stormtroopers are their own, like, evil group
Yeah.
of special guys.
Yeah.
Remember, the Republic never had an army.
Correct.
So what this new law is allowing them to draft citizens into, like, the army that like we saw Solo get recruited into in his movie. Andor was a part of that military
Yes.
that he served in. And so, like, that's what it'll have two major effects. One, yeah, probably the dissolution of the few remaining clones they have. But also, like, the forced draft of Imperial citizens and criminals into
to become
the army.
The military, yeah.
I just wanted to highlight that because I actually,
that's definitely going to be. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say I get into the stupid politics stuff.
No, I really do too, and I hadn't actually like thought about it from that other perspective. I was only thinking about it from the perspective of it being, slowly continuing to just phase out as a way to phase out the clone troopers, but I hadn't really thought of it from that other perspective as well.
Yeah, so everything that's happening here will end up affecting the lives of Han Solo and Cassius Andor and everyone.
Yeah. Oh, so good. I love how they're all connecting it. Like, I really do love how much, honestly, this is the episode where some of the stuff that we just watched in the Clone Wars also comes into key point, because they've tied back to these old things that they've done and are just making it actually mean a lot more by connecting them, which I just, again, really, really cool that they're doing that. And they're handling it super well.
Yes, because so Crosshair is summoned to the Vice Admiral's office. We learn that it is the same Vice Admiral from season 1 and that executed Wilco at the end of episode 2. And he has a brief conversation with Crosshair, basically informing him that he has been medically cleared for duty. And we learn that Crosshair was on that platform for over a month.
Yeah.
32
just like,
days.
Was it that? I thought it was 35.
No, 32. Well, they said 32 rotations. So assuming that, I'm going to hope for his sake, maybe a Kaminoan like day is not 24 hours. Maybe it's a little shorter. I don't know.
Even then, though, that's still like way, way long to be just like isolated like that. And probably, like, I think he was injured. Like, I don't.
Yeah.
Was he hurt? I feel like
he had been in battle, so I'm sure he had taken something.
Yes, I think he had gotten burned or something, because he has that scar on the side of his head that I don't remember from last season.
I think he had that last season.
Did he have it last season? Okay, maybe
let us know in the comments. I can't remember.
Yeah, I don't remember now if he had that last season or not. I'll have to look at pictures of him from previous seasons. But regardless, he was there for a really long time. He's finally medically cleared, but
he is not cleared to have a command.
He's not cleared to have a command, though. Like, the Admiral kind of laughs at him when he thinks that he's going to be leading a squad. No, he's actually joining a squad, and none other than Commander Cody's squad. We've got Commander Cody in this episode, and oh my god, I have so many feels.
Yeah. So it's been great to see Cody. We weren't really sure what had happened to him. I think after, he had left Ahsoka.
Yes.
We did.
And Obi-Wan's gone, so like he's just like he has. Well, and I don't know if he knows what happens to him either. Like,
I don't think he does, because he's still with the Empire at this point. And something that should be called out about Cody is he has lost all of his color. Like
All of it. All of the orange that was decorating his armor is completely gone, which is really sad to
and
see.
you can
He has
imagine that's an order from the Vice Admiral.
Oh, absolutely. His helmet now has like that same like ugly drab gray that the all the governors wear and everything. It's got that same color tone. And like I
Arian
think
gray.
it's that he's still designated as like a commander and
Yep.
everything like that, but he's just all of the in like personality of his armor has just been stripped away. And it's so sad to see.
Now Cody himself is still Cody, thankfully.
Yes.
And what it seems has happened is that the clones are still being used by the Empire for special ops work.
Yes.
Because they still have to admit that they are some of the best of the best.
Mhm.
And they deploy Cody, Crosshair, and a group of clones to the planet of Desix under the guise of a diplomatic mission. They have told the people of Desix that they are sending hostage negotiators to basically deal with this situation because the people of Desix are holding the governor hostage and basically demanding their independence to be recognized. Then they'll give the governor back. And so the Empire is simply just going to try and trick them, tell them it's a diplomatic mission, land a group of clone commandos, and basically storm the place.
Yep.
It doesn't quite work out that way.
No, because these former separatists know the Republic's old tricks and the Empire's new tricks. They're not even really new tricks. They're just the same old tricks that were happening before of, whenever they were actually sneaking in the Empire or the Emperor was doing something behind, the Jedi's back and causing shenanigans. They know it was going to be a sneak attack and they shoot down the transport ship out of the air, which does end up damaging quite a number of Cody's troops.
Yes. So they don't know that their trick has been basically, double tricked. And the droids, a bunch of B1s with missile launchers, take out their transport as it's coming to land. And the B1s who then go to inspect the wreckage find a number of dead clones, but not all of them. Of course, our main characters survive, along with like 3 or 4 of a couple of unnamed boys who are along with them.
I actually think it's a little bit of a bigger portion because I know at the end of the episode we see a number of them being escorted onto one of the ships because they did get left behind for being injured. So I think there was like 10 of them that survived, but only like 4 of them actually end up going on the mission because they're the able-bodied ones.
And so this leads to some of the most brutal fighting I think we've actually seen in Star Wars, because we get some street city fighting in this.
It's so good. And it feels like, okay, when Legion, the fact that Legion doesn't, like Star Wars Legion, the tabletop game, doesn't tie itself into these cartoons a bit more in regards to like narrative campaigns or scenarios blows my mind, because I feel like this scenario would be a great one to run in Legion in a like just combative situation. This is also something that like Kill Team I think does a lot really well, where they have the small skirmish battles, because that's what this is. It's such a great small city skirmish battle.
Yeah, the new I was gonna say the new rules for 40K about doing like the breaching of ships is very much like this too. But yeah, so that group ends up fighting their way through this city fighting against B1s, against droidicas, eventually even some commandos, and all of this is possible because the governor of Desix actually has an old Confederate tactical droid. And that's allowed her to actually manage and control all of these forces. Because throughout the episode, unlike the Clone Wars, we see the organic people of this planet.
And it's so cool to me that they're actually, I mean, we talked about this a little bit already, of that they're actually showing us the people behind the separatist force and personalizing them and making you empathize with them, because they're essentially on the same side now as the Bad Batch when it comes to the audience's concern, because they're all against the Empire. And it's so good. And I love seeing, just to speak to the droid usage in this episode, these are some of the most competent droids I've ever seen. And I love that element about them because they still have some of those charming like little affects, like the Roger, and some of the way that they like, especially the B1s speak. Good. Right. But like they're also, I feel like, this slight level of competence or personality that's in them a bit more because they are trying to protect this specific just homeworld rather than being this big sort of galactic force trying to go against the Republic.
Yes, and like we see some like call outs to past episodes. For example, there's a point where one of the clones attempts to hit a droideka with a popper, a grenade, and if it's actually canon from an old episode of, I think, Clone Wars, Ahsoka had to teach civilians how to use them. And the trick is if you throw them too quickly, the shield bounces them. And that's why one bounced, but the other one went through. Yes. Because it was thrown slowly
enough that it actually got through the...
Yes, we saw a call out to that. We also saw an amazing kill involving a B1 battle droid, being like hit with a grenade, shot so he fell over into the shield of a droideka, and then the grenade went off. It was amazing.
Oh my god, it was so good. I was like, we have to talk about that explosion because it was just like the best part about it was the slow sink of the dead B1 through the shield, and then when the contact hit, because he had been charged with the bomb and everything, the droideka just exploded in glorious fashion, and it was very contained because the shield was still up, so it was just this fireball, and it was amazing.
Yeah, and one other thing I want to highlight just about the city fight that's important for character is, I highlighted earlier, throughout Clone Wars, we saw droids, we saw evil Sith, and we saw like spider admirals, all very evil things, right?
Yes.
And Cody ends up not kicking in the door, but ends up in the doorway of a household.
Yeah, just a civilian home.
Of a civilian separatist household. And I think that was meant to be the first time Cody's ever actually seen that the separatists are like civilians.
Which is the exact same thing that happened with Tech last episode. This is really, I think, going to be a theme potentially through the season of various clones starting to realize that it's not like, they fought a lot of droids, but that's not actually the people that were against them. It was just standard civilians, very similar to their own people they were protecting. And now they're kind of in this awkward position where like they're being exposed to that. And they're also being the ones doing a lot of the things that I feel like they themselves are going to start acknowledging they were fighting against previously.
Definitely. And we will get to that a little bit more at the end when we talk about sort of the end of the episode.
Yes.
But following that, this episode, if you're into action, it's a great episode for action. Because Crosshair, Cody, and their few clone brethren end up having to fight their way through, once again, a medieval castle, like all the way to the point that they have like the spiral defense staircases that they're like fighting up.
Which is so cool how they handle that. Like,
yeah, Crosshair's abilities as a sniper become like invaluable here because he's like bouncing shots off mirrors and crap to take off people around corners. Like, I'm sorry, we have to highlight one thing before they got into the castle.
Yes.
The tank shot.
Oh my god, yes. Crosshair has this amazing shot at the beginning of this whole sequence before we even get into the city,
like to get
where
into
they have to take out. To get to the castle, they have to like take out one of the old droid like battle tanks, and he waits while taking fire from the thing until he gets the perfect shot to shoot his blast down the barrel of the tank, exploding it from within and killing all the droids which are actually dealing with it, which he called out to Cody early on, being, well, their weakness is the droids commanding them. And it was just like such a good, so like between that and then his eventual mirror shot at the end of the sequence when they're climbing up that spiral staircase that we talked about, and he has Cody throw the final mirror puck, and he nails the tactical droid. bounced off of like, I think it like reflected 3 times. Like
it had to take out like 3 dudes before it got to him.
Oh my god, it was just so good. It was just like if you want just like the clones being badasses.
That was a Domino like from X-Men shot.
It was so cool. And what was like excruciating about this entire sequence is I really was rooting for both sides because I want the droids with their separatist like people to be successful because I know the evil of the Empire. I know how crap Palpatine is, and I want them to succeed and be separate and be safe, right? But at the same time, I am like sitting there going, please don't kill any of the clones. Please don't kill any of the clones. Please, please, please don't kill any of the clones. And of course, some of them do die. By the end of it, it is just Crosshair and Cody, other than the injured ones who got left back and who weren't actually storming the castle. But everybody that went to go storm the castle perishes in this episode, except for those 2. And when they finally get up to the top and they've dealt with the tactical droid and they start to look for the governor, oh my god, I had the scariest moment. Talk about it.
So Governor Tawny Ames comes out. Now, up until this point, the governor has been wearing a full head covering mask that has shielded what she looks like and has given her a very mechanical sounding voice, sort of in line with, I think, the theme of the Separatists, of they've always been a faceless robot.
Yes.
And she has the Imperial governor, like, human shield, gun to the head hostage here, right?
Yeah.
And she takes off her helmet to reveal the human face beneath it. And it's a stern looking woman, but she has a look that is very reminiscent of the separatist friend of Amidala during the Clone
I don't
Wars.
remember her name. I actually think I think this character was friends with that.
She was, yes, because she tells Crosshair and Cody, basically they get into a dramatic standoff. Cody is trying to talk her down, telling her to
promising peace.
Yeah, promising like release him, we can talk about this and work it out politically, etc., etc. And she explains that during the Clone Wars, she and her compatriots, including that character from season 2 or 3, had attempted to broker a peace with the Republic.
And the Emperor had shot them down.
Yeah, but Palpatine had worked to ensure that had not worked out. But her viewpoint of it had been that the Republic had betrayed the trust of the Request in the same way the Republic had viewed that the Separatists had betrayed it, because at the same time it was all just Palpatine.
Right.
And so she does not believe the Empire is trustworthy because she thinks it's like the Republic and she didn't trust the Republic.
Right.
But Cody convinces her.
Yes.
And she releases the governor.
And then the governor immediately demands that Cody kill her, which he refuses.
But Cody because he promised her a peaceful resolution to all this.
Yes. And then Crosshair does it.
Well, what happens is Cody hesitates and stops, and the governor screams at him that he will face the consequences if he does not perform. And before he even finishes, you hear the blaster shot, and we see the governor crumple.
Yes, and the other key element that I want to call out that the governor said, like the Imperial governor says, is he says for him to follow orders, because that is Crosshair's crux.
It is.
He has to follow orders. So when he heard that,
chicken, it triggers him.
Exactly. So like because of that, he continued his rant or whatever at Cody, and that's when Crosshair fired, and like Cody ends up having a conversation with them afterwards
back at base
when they've gotten back at the base and everything. And because obviously it's been handled now, the woman is dead, the governor can be put into place.
Stormtroopers take over the place.
Yes, specifically stormtroopers are sent in after the clones are being escorted out, or not escorted, but like being, made to leave and everything, because their mission's complete. They're done. They don't need to be there anymore. So they're leaving. Cody sees a bunch of stormtroopers come in. That planet's now secured for the Empire. Sucks for those people. I do wonder if we're going to see that planet referenced again, see any of those people come back.
I think we might.
But when they get back to base, though, Cody and Crosshair end up having a conversation, and Cody sort of brings up that, some clones are questioning what they're doing and whether or not it's right. And questioning Order 66. Crosshair sort of gives his same run of the mill following orders. We were doing our jobs sort of thing. And Cody's not so sure.
Well,
and they
Cody's
sort
point is very much before they were fighting for the Republic, for democracy.
Yes.
And that in of itself has its own flaws, but now they're not regardless of what they thought they were fighting for before.
Yes.
Now they are fighting for this empire.
And it's specifically the Emperor, really.
Yes, and that was not what any of them thought they were fighting for.
Correct. And so then they end up parting ways and,
the next day,
relaxing after the missions. And it comes to the next day.
We see the exact same thing that we saw earlier in the episode with Crosshair's depressing, lonely mornings.
Except that this time, the alarm doesn't actually wake him up. He's already awake because one of the last things that Cody did say to him was basically, I don't remember the exact quote, so I'm not going to try to say it, but essentially what it was implying was that Crosshair is eventually going to, Crosshair has to live with the fact that he murdered that woman in cold blood when he, and went against the offer of peace just to follow orders. He has to live with that because they're different from the droids.
Yeah, Cody says, do you know what separates us from the droids?
Yes.
And Cody tells him, we make our choices.
Live with their choices.
We have free will. We make choices, and we have to live with those choices.
Right. And so then they cut to the same scene before that we had seen at the beginning of the episode with Crosshair doing his normal routine. But the key difference, other than the fact that he also puts on his armor this time, he wasn't in pajamas. Because he was in pajamas for that first one. He ends
up getting summoned by the Vice Admiral again.
He gets summoned by the Vice Admiral again, but he's awake before the alarm goes off because he is thinking about what he did. And I think this is I think this episode is really the start of Crosshair maybe either eventually defecting or at least coming into conflict with his own internal coding. And I cannot wait. It's going to be so heartbreaking and I'm probably going to cry.
Yeah, because the final plot point for the episode is he gets summoned to the Vice Admiral's office again and is told that he is going to report for his next mission. But he is now reporting to a new commander.
Yes.
And he is confused by this and he sort of blurts out, what about Cody? And what's important here is the Vice Admiral doesn't have any idea who the hell Cody, quote unquote, is because he only has
he only knows them by their code names or by their numbers.
Their numbers, with their official numbers.
Yes.
And so he has to Crosshair repeats his CC number and he's like, oh, yes, he went to AWOL. So we now know that Commander Cody is out there somewhere.
Yes.
So we can hope him and Rex end up getting back together. But
I do hope so. I am my one fear now that Cody has been introduced, because I don't actually, and we were talking about this a little bit off camera. I don't really know if we know what happens to Cody specifically. At least
Rex makes it all the way to the Battle of Yavin. I don't know what happens to Cody.
But I don't know what happens to Cody, and I am now terrified for this season because I feel like we're going to find out what happens to him, and I don't feel like it's going to be pleasant.
We'll
and
see. He might end up
I
okay.
am so worried. No, the clones and the clones have the worst lives.
Rex ended up on his fishing ATT or whatever. It'll be fine.
Rex is one of the few lucky ones. I'm so sad. Also, because there was one other thing we didn't really talk about it specifically, but I just want to briefly call it out before we wrap this episode and everything. There was a point where Cody and Crosshair were also talking in this episode, and Crosshair specifically basically throws the Jedi under the bus and calls them traitors. And the look on Cody's face in the same way that Wilco had that twitch of no, I can't not falsify a report, or I can't falsify a report, that's against the rules. Cody also had this expression that crossed his face briefly that was definitely you could tell it's him thinking about, I'm assuming, Ahsoka and Obi-Wan specifically, because Cody doesn't know what happened to Obi-Wan. I am not 100% sure he knows what even happened to Ahsoka, and
he knows Ahsoka got away, but that's all he knows.
Yes. So like, and he, I think, still has like affection for her and everything. And I assume he like has some affection for Obi-Wan because I mean he ran with him for so
Oh
long.
yeah,
So like just
I think Cody believes Obi-Wan and Anakin died. That was like the
yeah.
official like Imperial report. He does
Oh,
know.
is it was Obi-Wan
Yeah, he
claimed
knows
dead?
Ahsoka got away.
Okay.
But because Ahsoka didn't know that Anakin was alive until Rebels, I'm assuming Cody's in the same boat.
I suspect so as well, which also just goes back to my theory of the Emperor probably like broke up the 501st equipment and like spread it
Yeah.
around just to like again sort of just kill any thought of Anakin. So that Darth Vader could go do his thing. But yeah, like just I am so scared now to see what happens to Cody because as much I want to know what happens to him, like I want to know where his end comes because I assume that's what we're going to be leading to. But I also am like terrified to find out because I'm like, please don't have it be Crosshair that kills him. Like, oh, it's gonna be I'm loving this. I'm loving this season so far. These first 3 episodes have been an absolute roller coaster of
Dude, they were
emotion and
heavy.
just they're heavy, they're beautiful. Like this is like if you ever thought Bad Batch was meant for kids, please don't because this is not strictly a children's cartoon. Like
No.
Omega is not annoying really in my opinion. Like they handle I think the clones and like their interactions and giving them personality so well and then the animation is just freaking stunning. Like that first episode, like still just stands out so vividly in my head because of the bold colors and just how bright and in full daylight everything in every one of those characters was, and just seeing them was so cool. Like this, I hope you guys are watching it.
If they're
Do you
this
want to say
far,
any
okay.
final?
If you are like an hour and a half into a Bad Batch podcast and you're not watching it, what's going on?
I mean, you should be. Go watch it. Go watch it right now. And if you've already watched it, rewatch it because you know you want to. It was a good 3 episodes. I can't wait till next week for episode 4. We're going to come back with another podcast episode discussing that one.
A bit shorter than this one.
Obviously, because we don't have 3 episodes to talk about, but we wanted to get all 3 of those episodes, go ahead and like get them out of the way so that we could be caught up with the seasons and just go from there. And as Chaos Cultist mentioned, we eventually do want to turn this into maybe more of a live program, as well as we are also going to be covering other topics down the line. So if Star Wars happens to not be your jam,
there. That's where live chat will go. It's over there.
Yeah, over there or there. I don't know. I actually don't.
It's up above your head.
Oh, there.
Yes.
Live chat will go there. There we go. Haha, nailed it. Yeah, we'll eventually do that. And I'm really looking for this. So if you guys have enjoyed this extra long start to our podcast episode, do make sure to leave a comment down below. Let us know what other topics you maybe want to see us cover in the future. And yeah, just make sure you're subscribed if you haven't already, because that also helps out the channel. And then it'll let you know whenever new videos come out. And just as a little teaser for tomorrow, we've got a brand new painting tutorial. It's also Star Wars themed because if you guys can't tell, I'm on a real kick right now. I'm on a Star Wars kick and it's hard. We're going to be painting up Darth Maul, so I'm really looking forward to that, and I hope you guys are too. Did you want to say anything else before we head out, Chaos Cultist?
Nope. I just look forward to seeing you guys next week. Do be sure, because this is the first episode of this. Yeah, like she said, hit the like button, share it if you can, because the more
leave a comment,
the
engage
more
with
we
it.
Feed the algorithm, the more it helps us. So
absolutely, and yes, we really appreciate you guys, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.